Hello world, it's Dave again, and I've got another book review for you here. The Evolutionary Void, Peter F. Hamilton, and the final book in the Void Trilogy series. Just finished it up the other day with a big long read, got through the amazing climax of the story, and it was incredible. And so I think I'll probably discuss one or two spoilers in this book, and I feel like if you've come this far in the series, then I won't be I won't be spoiling it for anybody who's already read the prior two books. But let that be your warning: if you haven't read the first two books in the series, either watch my reviews on those instead, or be forewarned that what I'm going to talk about will actually spoil one of the details. But it's just because I want to talk about it in how well the idea is developed in this book and why it's such a major virtue of reading this book. So, without any further ado, I'll go on. So basically, at the end of the second book in the trilogy, you come to a conclusion about one of the main characters, though there are many. One of the main characters, and it's the character of Eddard, who's inside the void, and he's like the Neo of the void. He's capable of manipulating and changing things with his mind telepathically to a far greater scale than anybody is capable of doing in the void. Even though everybody's at some level capable of doing it, he's the Neo. He's the one. He can do it on a crazy level, and it ends up changing the course of history in the in the world that he becomes a part of. So that's to say that he goes to the main city in the void and really starts to shake things up. And by the end of the second book, this is where all the spoilers start to come. So you need to have finished the second book, for these not to be spoilers. Be warned, final warning. He's basically returns to town after wiping out this garrison of people out in the countryside, doing some really crazy telepathic stuff. But he's out there on a final fight with his friends to wipe out these people who are harassing the main city, and all of his friends start to get picked off. And you kind of wonder at that point, any reader kind of wonders, like, is the story really going to be this dark? And he gets back to town, and it continues. His wife's been killed. To get him out of the town was the whole reason, and everybody in the town who he loved has been killed. And his old order that he was working so hard to develop in the city is overthrown, and all these people that he's worked so hard to get out of power now have absolute power. And so things are just rough. And then he takes his lost love. It's basically a woman he spurned, and went with another woman because she's the only one left alive, and he escapes with her, Selrana. And he escapes like in a special way that he's able to, where he can like travel below the city in these tunnels. The city allows him to use it for it. He has this telepathic connection with the city. And he is then at the end of that betrayed by this woman, and it turns out that once he left her behind and entered into his new relationship, that she felt scorned, or whatever you want to call it. And so she actually hated him, and when she escapes with him, she only goes along so she can sell him out. And then at the end of all that, the conclusion of the book in the second book is that not only is he the one and can he alter things and has incredible telepathic force and everything like that, but he's capable of turning back time. He can actually reset events to whatever time he wants, and then change them as he's like the one differing factor as time goes on. And with his greater strength compared to everyone else, he can then have a huge impact. And this is where it comes up to a really, really interesting point that I enjoy, and a reason that I would say why Hamilton is so great as an author and why I love these books, is because you then immediately have this kind of classic idea that has been dealt with a little bit before, which is, what if you could turn back time? Turn back. I'm not going to do that. What if you could turn back time? And is that suddenly a cure-all for everything in your life? Or would it have other more subtle repercussions to it? And we've seen like examples of this in Hollywood media, with like Click, with who's Adam Sandler and things like that, where they can control the flow of time and stuff. But when you're watching shows like that, it's so ridiculous. It doesn't really suspend your disbelief. It doesn't allow you to accurately, I think, imagine that scenario. You have a lot of fun with it, but you don't actually imagine what would really be the social repercussions, or like, the neurological repercussions on somebody who went through an experience like that. And that's where Hamilton does an incredible job, because he focuses on that as opposed to the absurd, being able to like slow down a chick's boobs as she runs. As amazing as that would be, it focuses more on the other things. Like, an example could be, if you could travel back in time and fix things, but you still had to live through then the events that continue to go onwards and see the same things, how that in itself might be a form of torture, where you would grow so frustrated if you had to repeat things multiple times and watch people go through the same mistakes, and no matter how much faith you had in them, you may be able to change things directly, but not kind of that surrounding world that does so many stupid things. You'd walk into a room and you just see predictably that this person, small example, stubbed their toe that day, and they horribly lose their temper. And there's nothing you can do to reason with them. You just know that they're going to lose their temper, and that would drive you absolutely insane. I think for me, a good example might be for video games, if I'd ever played. And if you had made it a certain way through a video game, and you save quite often, but then you forget to save, and then you get to a point where a horrible thing happens, but you screw up, or sorry, not but, you get to this horrible thing, you forgot to save, and you have to go back so far, it's infuriating, and you can't usually come back to the game for, when I used to play games more when I was younger, I'd have to leave it for a couple days. And then I, with a fresh mind, would start into wherever I had left off. And then you imagine this on the scale of somebody's life, and you can see how, as much as it might be a gift, it could be a curse as well. And he really explores that, not only the benefits of it, but the drawbacks of being able to do this. And it just paints a really full picture of the experience and allows you to vividly imagine it, as opposed to just be lost on some absurd, like fun trip where you're like, I would do this and I would do this. It really lets you examine the idea. Something else, and this is something again in many of his books, but now it really came to my attention as I moved my way through this book. Another strength that he has, another reason I would recommend this book is, I think in good writing, there's a way to reveal plot twists and cool ideas. And I've kind of talked about this before, but it's pretty simple. It's just if you have a cool plot twist, or if you have a cool technological idea, social idea that you want in your story, that you reveal it in increments. So if you have a cool technology, you maybe show somebody using it, but in a real like distant way. You saw somebody use this thing, but you couldn't quite see exactly what they were doing. You just saw the end result of it. And then 20 pages later in the book, you zero in a little bit more, you get a little more detail regarding that kind of thing. Maybe what the item looks like that actually triggered the event, something like that. That's for technology. But for a plot twist, it could be something like, if you're trying, you're revealing who caused the murder, you start with a simple hint, and then you progress another 20 pages, you drop a little clearer hint, until finally you've got two more hints left. One of them is almost hitting the reader on the head, and then finally it's just obviously said, so the reader can finally understand. And for a reader who wants to look a little more deeply, these are just the sort of Easter eggs that really add a level of satisfaction to the book, that increases your appreciation of it, that aren't absolutely necessary, but show a perfect mark of a good writer, because not only do they have the good overall story, but that added depth is there for you if you really want to enjoy it. And Hamilton goes as far as to, like, he almost makes a joke of it, I thought, in this most recent book, where there were plot twists where you could see them subtly being revealed, like I'm describing, but then it would get to that final point in the book where one of the characters would announce to the reader and to some other character in the book, oh, this is what it is. But he would have characters in the book respond to that and say, oh, you know, having been told by this character, say, "You didn't know that? We figured that out ages ago." And it's almost like he's sort of mocking the reader, having some fun with the reader, where he's saying like, "I made that clear, you know, that these people in the book, you know, if you think of them on that deeper level, they had to figure it out like you had to figure it out, and they did it ages ago." And so it's almost indicating at that point when you did figure it out, if that was only the time that you got to it, that if you went back further, you might have seen, like I'm saying, these earlier signs to let you know. And that's just incredible. That's just great writing, and that's something I'm sure he's done in the other books, but it really came to my attention in this one. And just like I've said in previous reviews for this series, he's really good at developing ideas, but I just thought to give the example of that person kind of stuck moving through time in that way, and the way that he really fleshes it out in this particular novel was another perfect example and a good reason to enjoy this book, and something I would say to people to pay attention to as they went through this book, because I haven't spoiled anything from it. It's just, you know, that's going to be brought up obviously because you find that out at the end of the second, and it's really interesting to consider. With that said, for people still making their way through the book, Hamilton delivers again on one of the most amazing, incredible endings of a book that I've ever read, and I'll keep saying that for all the good books I read. I know that's going to be a lot more, but it really was a fantastic ending to a book where, you know, you're building up themes and ideas and a plot that is so huge, you just wonder how he's going to top the already crazy things that are sitting in front of you. You know, when you've got a book that discusses humans who can live forever, starships that can go as fast as 99 times the speed of light, you know, you have to think, what kind of ending is going to top this? Because these are the sort of things that books might end with, and things on that scale. And he does it. He absolutely does it. He tops it all. And, you know, another tip of the hat to him. It's stuff that anybody could think of. They just don't, you know, and it's when you read it at the end, you're like, oh, that's an incredible idea. I could have thought of that. And it allows you to connect with it that much better, because it's not like he just ends with some sort of philosophy that is beyond the everyman. It's stuff that everyone's going to understand, but is still incredibly original, creative, and does justice to, like I say, to the scale that's building over the course of the book. So it was great to read, an ending for all time, and I think I've got to give credit to my friend who I talked to today about this. There's a character that reoccurs throughout this whole series and in the previous two books that this universe is built around, not in this Void trilogy, the Commonwealth saga, which is two books that predate this series. There's a character that shows up, and I could never figure it out. I was like, is he related to somebody? Is he somebody's father? You know, something like that. And then my buddy said, you know, I think it might actually be his persona. It might actually be Hamilton placing himself in the book as this character, kind of this observational character that just pokes his head out occasionally to make a comment or two. And I thought that was brilliant, because I kind of got that feeling, because Hamilton has a lot of themes, one of which is that conflict is necessary, and that a life of perfection is actually a really flawed life, because it's incredibly boring, and it's through, you know, it's an old theme. It's that conflict gives rise to creativity, to originality, to self-betterment, and it's a continued evolution, which is important. And I can see that for his passion in writing, because I feel like that's the way that you are a good writer, is to really feel like you can never have written it all, that there's always a new cool idea. And while this theme is an undercurrent, this character actually came out and said it a couple times in the book, or just made statements along those lines, like, oh, I just keep going forward, or I just, you know, like, you know, it's always to a new horizon no matter what has happened. And then my buddy said, I think it's actually him. And the guy's name is so ridiculous, it's almost like it's a joke that his name is so over the top in the book. And I don't know, it's like if you could name yourself like Max Power or something, it's kind of like that equivalent name, almost as a joke. But that was great too. Just layers and layers. It's like his books are onions. It's awesome. It's a great read. I really enjoyed it for all those reasons I just discussed, and I hope that this in some way brings people to Peter F. Hamilton a bit more, because he's the #1 sci-fi author in the UK, but that never means anything with authors, because I've discovered I keep coming across authors that are the #1 this, the #1 that, or have had these incredible achievements. I read a fair bit, but I've never heard of them. So it's always worth, knocking on everybody's door to let them know they're out there. The book I'm on now, and it's already fantastic, is Watership Down. It's been really cool. I used to, in my youth, enjoy the anthropomorphized animals of the Chronicles of Narnia. I love talking horses and stuff, and it's all about talking rabbits, and it's really dark, which is cool. I never thought I'd see that about rabbits, but it's really dark, really interesting, and like I say, something I always heard of. So I can't wait to post that, but it'll be coming up soon. I'm sure I'll fly through it. Yeah, so that's it. If you enjoy, like, subscribe, share. I appreciate you dropping by the channel. And until we meet again, world, thanks for tripping with Dave. Ciao for now. Peace.